Attorney General Jeff Sessions had a big problem going into today's Senate Intelligence Committee hearing. It was a problem that he created for himself in his answer to Senator Al Franken's question during his confirmation hearing.
If there is any evidence that anyone affiliated with the Trump campaign communicated with the Russian government in the course of this campaign, what will you do?
Senator Franken, I'm not aware of any of those activities. I have been called a surrogate at a time or two in that campaign, and I did not have communications with the Russians, and I'm unable to comment on it.
I did not have communications with the Russians. That part of Jeff Sessions' answer turned out to be untrue, very untrue. He was later revealed to have had multiple communications with Russians. Joining us now, Senator Al Franken, Democrat from Minnesota and a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Not surprisingly, you weren't present at the hearing today, but you came up. You played a key role in where Jeff Sessions stands now and why he's of such interest to the Senate. Let's listen to what Attorney General Sessions said about you in the hearing today.
Senator Franken asked me a rambling question after some 6 hours of testimony that included dramatic new allegations that the United States intelligence community, the U.S. intelligence community, had advised President-elect Trump, quote, that there was a continuing exchange of information during the campaign between Trump's surrogates and intermediaries for the Russian government. Close quote.
Senator, your reaction to that response today?
Well, I don't think my question was rambling. It was pretty direct. It was a pretty direct question, which is if those allegations are true, what would you do? Meaning, would you recuse yourself? And then he didn't answer that question. He answered his own question, which was, did I meet with any Russians? And he said, no, he hadn't. And that was not true. And then he didn't correct it until the Washington Post 7 weeks later came out saying he had met with Kislyak, the Russian ambassador, twice, once at the Republican convention in Cleveland. Then he had a press conference, and at the press conference where he recused himself finally, he did say that, you know, if I should have probably slowed down and said that I had met with Ambassador Kislyak twice. So that means that at that time, presumably, he remembered that he had spoken with Kislyak twice, and now his story has changed. He said he didn't recall that he met with Kislyak until he was told by the Washington Post. So his story is changing. I would like to have the Attorney General come and testify to the Judiciary Committee. He is the head of the Justice Department. We have oversight over the Judiciary Committee, and I would like to be able to question him as part of my oversight responsibilities.
Senator Elizabeth Warren has tweeted today that because Attorney General Sessions refused to answer key questions about his discussions related to the Comey firing, that her conclusion in her series of tweets was, as our top law enforcement officer, the AG must be truthful and uphold the law. Sessions cannot continue to serve. He should resign. Do you agree with Senator Warren on that?
Well, certainly I think he should testify before the Judiciary Committee first. I'm not sure. I guess he didn't claim executive privilege when he refused to respond to questions about his conversations with the president. I don't know what other legal basis he had not to talk about those conversations. I think that he, having had recused himself on the Russian investigation, I think it's a little hinky that he participated in the firing of Comey, because the president said it was because of Comey's handling of the Russian investigation. So I would like to get him before the Judiciary Committee so we can ask him questions.
Let's listen to what he said today about his participation in the Comey firing, even though he had recused himself from the Russia investigation.
I do not believe that it is a sound position to say that if you're recused for a single case involving any one of the great agencies like DEA or U.S. Marshals or ATF that are part of the Department of Justice, you can't make a decision about the leadership in that agency.
Senator Franken, your reaction to that explanation?
The president said that the reason that Comey was fired was because of the Russian investigation, and he participated in that firing. So that was in violation of his recusal. And that wasn't about some other investigation. It wasn't about the Hillary matter. It was about the Russian investigation. That's what the president said. I think the president knows why he fired Comey.
Do you think that the Attorney General chose to testify about these matters to the Intelligence Committee instead of the Committee of Normal Jurisdiction over his activities, your Judiciary Committee, because the Intelligence Committee is not as well versed in his previous testimony to the Judiciary Committee?
I think that may be exactly why, but I would ask that he testify before our committee. Again, we are the Oversight Committee on Judiciary. On the Justice Department. It's the same root word, judiciary, justice. He should come before us. He is the Attorney General.
And Senator, just to go back over your exchange with him that has become so controversial since you had it. Today, his explanation for his answer, which was obviously incomplete at the time, was that he was responding to this breaking news story that you were presenting to him, and within the context of all of that new information that he was hearing that he had never heard before, he felt like his response was to the elements of the breaking news story you were talking about, and he was not concentrating in that response on his own record of interaction with Russian officials.
That just sounds like a very convoluted excuse. He just answered his own question, and he answered it falsely. He didn't answer the question I asked. I asked him if it were true, and in the question, I said, this is just breaking, so I don't expect you to know about it. But if it is true that members of the campaign met with the Russians and communicated with the Russians during the campaign, what would you do? Meaning, would you recuse yourself? And he answered, I myself did not meet with the Russians, and of course he did. And then he could have, any time during the 7 weeks, he could have said, oh, I forgot to say that, but he didn't until the Washington Post printed it. And then he said in his press conference, oh, I probably, if I had just slowed down, I should have mentioned that I had met with Kislyak twice. And then since then, his story has changed, that he hadn't remembered that he met with Kislyak until he was informed by the Post. So the whole Trump campaign and the people who worked on the campaign and have been in the administration seem to have collective amnesia when it comes to meeting Russians. They are not acting, as I've said, like people who have nothing to hide.
Well, to go back to Senator Warren's judgment that based on the totality of his testimony to the Senate over this year, and particularly today, that he should resign. Do you think that's a premature judgment by Senator Warren, or is there a reason why you don't share that judgment at this point?
I would not come to that judgment until he had a chance to explain himself in front of the Judiciary Committee, and I would think that he would be happy, he should be happy to do that.
And if he refuses to do that, Senator, to your committee?
I think that becomes a problem, and I would ask Chairman Grassley and Ranking Member Feinstein to compel him to.
Senator
he is the Attorney General.
Senator Al Franken, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence. It is Lawrence, right?
It is. And Senator Franken is, of course, the author of the new book, Giant of the Senate. I wonder who that book is talking about, Giant of the Senate. Thank you, Senator, very much.
Giant of the Senate.
That's what we thought. Thank you, Senator.